Let's jump in and tell us what city are you watching from. Claire Hayes stepped out of her office at 7:00 the south. Evening. The city lit up. Traffic, rushing as if it had no idea whose day it was. In her hand was a worn-out handbag, and in her heart was a feeling that was both empty and tangled. Today, it was her 30th birthday, 30 years old, in a brand new place. No friends, no family, and not a single direct greeting besides. A few awkward text messages from co-workers. At least I can treat myself to a proper dinner, Claire told herself, trying to lift her spirits. She had made a reservation at an upscale restaurant the day before. The prices were steep, but she thought, surely I can't be eating instant noodles in my tiny 35 meters, the apartment on my birthday. The taxi carried her across streets glowing with neon lights. Claire sat in the back seat, watching raindrops scatter against the window. A hint of loneliness crept into her chest, but she forced a smile as if to congratulate herself. The restaurant's at the end of the block. I'll try to stop right at the entrance, so you won't get wet, the driver said, warmly. Claire nodded, thanked him, and began rummaging through her bag for an umbrella. But before she found it, the forward bedation car jolted. Bang! A loud pop echoed, and the car shook violently. The driver, cursed under his breath, leaned out the window and groaned. Damn, flat tire. Claire glanced at her watch. 7:45 p.m. Not exactly the way a birthday should begin. The driver looked apologetic. Sorry, miss. I'll need to change the Boris tire. Do you want to wait or walk the Ferris rest of the way? Claire forced a polite smile. That's fine. I'll walk. It's close anyway. The rain was heavier now. Within 3 minutes her neatly styled hair hung flat and damp against her cheeks. Mascara streaked down in smudges. She let out a bitter laugh. Perfect. Birthday, Claire. Inside the restaurant, warm golden lights glowed, and the clinking of glasses mingled with a soft hum of conversation. Claire approached the hostess stand, pushed back her wet hair, and said, "Hello, I have a reservation under Claire Hayes." The pretty hostess tapped on the keyboard, offering a polite smile until it abruptly vanished. "I'm sorry, Miss Hayes, but I don't see your name in the system." Claire frowned. "I called yesterday to book. I spoke with someone named Marcus." Marcus no longer works here," the hostess replied, her tone suggesting Claire should have known that. "If you'll wait, we'll try to arrange a table, but it will take at least 30 minutes. Claire sighed. "All right." She sat at the bar and ordered a agreed cocktail, one that cost twice as much as her usual lunch. The alcohol hit fast on an empty stomach. About 40 minutes later, another staff member led her to a distillery in Story Clyde's Drented 5 seam, small table tucked right next to the kitchen door. Pots and pans clattered as loudly, waves of greasy air rolling out. It was nothing like the romantic dinner and she had imagined. Quietly, Claire opened the menu. After some hesitation, she chose the mushroom rasada with white wine sauce, a refined dish, fancy enough for a birthday. But when the server returned, what landed in front of her was eggplant lasagna. "Excuse me, but I ordered the risotto," Claire said gently. The waiter sighed as if she were bothering him. "I'll change it." 15 minutes later, the rasado finally arrived. Claire stared at the steam rising, fork in hand, but couldn't bring herself to take a bite. A lump swelled in her chest. Everything that had happened since morning, those half-hearted birthday texts, the flat tire, the lost reservation, being seated by the kitchen, the wrong dish lined up, like little jokes at her expense. She leaned back in her chair and let out a laugh. Not a happy one, but the kind of laugh you give when you no longer know how else to react. Half funny, half bitter, 30 years old, alone in a vast city, and this was her birthday. Claire took a deep breath, letting her fork touch the risotto that had finally arrived after so many mishaps. The aroma of mushrooms rose faintly, but she couldn't summon an appetite. Loneliness wrapped around her like a thick fog, especially as she looked around. Couples holding hands, families laughing, friends clinking glasses, and she sat there silent with the clang of pots and pans hammering from the kitchen behind, and her just finish eating and go home. Then this birthday will be over, she thought, forcing a smile for herself. But just as Claire lifted her fork, the chair across from her was suddenly pulled out. A tall man in a light blue shirt sat down as if the table had always been his. "Sorry," he leaned in, speaking softly, his voice both urgent and laced with humor. "Keep eating. Pretend we know each other. Otherwise, I'll have to sit with my boss and his family. Trust me, no one deserves that on a Friday night." Claire froze, fork suspended midair, wide eyes staring at the stranger now seated across from her. "Who are you? Why are you sitting here?" The man smiled, casually, placing his napkin across his lap, as if taking someone else's seat was no bigger deal than sipping water. "Just a minute, I promise. But if you look over at that table," he tilted his head slightly. 5 people, bald uncle, green tie, laughing, so loud the whole block hears. "That's my boss." Instinctively, Claire glanced over. Sure enough, there was a loud family ordering wine, the bald uncle in the middle roaring with laughter. Exactly as he described. "So what?" Claire frowned, setting her fork down. "You can't just sit at someone else's table to avoid your boss." "Fair point," he nodded with exaggerated remorse, though a mischievous glint sparked in his eyes. "But honestly, don't you look like someone who could use a little company? Truthfully, I just saved you from eating and your birthday dinner alone." His words struck home. Annoyance, embarrassment, and most of all, a sense of being caught, red-handed, swirled inside her. Claire let out a half-frustrated, half-resigned laugh. "Perfect. My birthday was already bad enough, and now I've got a stranger claiming to be my savior." His brown eyes twinkled with amusement. "Oh, today's your birthday." Before Claire could deny it, the waiter returned, setting down a small cake with a dainty candle. "Happy birthday, ma'am." "Compliments of the restaurant." Claire flushed. She remembered she'd foolishly mentioned the occasion when booking yesterday. Now, in front of a stranger, her loneliness felt even more exposed. The man jumped to his feet, clapping once. "Perfect. Now we've got a reason to toast." He waved for 2 glasses of sparkling wine. Claire hurriedly shook her head. "That's really not necessary," but he brushed it off with a flick of his hand. "Birthdays are sacred. My grandmother always said, the way you spend this day shapes your entire year. I can't let a woman sit alone by a noisy kitchen, blowing out candles in solitude. That would be a sacred crime." His tone was theatrical, his eyes bright, and Claire couldn't help but laugh lightly but more genuinely than she had all day. "Do you always give speeches like this?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Only for those worth listening," he replied with a grin. "I'm Ethan Cole." Claire hesitated, then nodded. Claire Hayes." Ethan lifted at his glass of sparkling wine as if performing a solemn ritual. "Happy birthday, Claire Hayes. May your year ahead be filled with laughter, fewer wrong orders, and no more dinners alone." Claire burst out laughing. It was shy but real, and it soothed the quiet ache and she'd carried in her chest since morning. Their glasses clinked gently, tiny bubbles bursting like a soft rain shower. Claire inhaled deeply, warmth spreading through her chest. She wasn't sure if it was the wine or the way Ethan delivered his toast like a sacred vow, but suddenly dinner felt less like a disaster. Do you always just do things your own way? Claire asked, trying to sound stern, though the corners of her lips betrayed her. Nope, Ethan said in a conspiratorial whisper. I just use my kind stranger privilege at the right time. Besides, see that table? The bald uncle just waved at me. If I go back, I'll have to endure his how-to change a light bulb effectively lecture for the 13th time this year. Claire laughed. The first full laugh of the day. A clatter came from the kitchen. A waiter passed by, clearly embarrassed about the earlier mix-up. Ethan leaned closer, whispering theatrically, "That kid looks like the type who once delivered a love letter to the principal by mistake." "You're terrible," Claire gasped, eyes wide. "Not terrible, observant. It's my job," he said, tapping the slim pencil, clipped to a shirt pocket. "Architects need to see people, places, and light. That's how we know where to put windows. So, the sun warms the room without blinding anyone. Is that so?" Claire finally took a bite of the asado. It was creamy, fragrant with mushrooms, not overly salty as she'd feared. "My job's different. We put deadlines wherever the sun can't reach." Ethan's laughter rang out so hearty that a little girl at the next table turned to watch, then giggled, too, without knowing why. "And what do you do?" he asked. "Project management." Claire shrugged. "I just transferred from a small branch to headquarters. Honestly, I feel a little out of place." Ethan nodded, not pressing his gaze. Soft, an encouraging kind of silence. On my first day, I overheard people whispering in the hallway. "Why bring a girl from some small-town branch to manage us? She must know somebody." I kept walking, but that night I cried. Ethan sipped his wine. "On construction sites, I've heard similar things. That guy talks about trees like they're his children. But you know what? Sometimes people fear good things because they're not used to them." "You sound like a philosopher," Claire teased gently. "A mediocre one," he shrugged. "But I have one rule. If something I design makes a child stop under a tree to eat ice cream without melting into a puddle of sweat, then I've done it right." Claire laughed. Again. Suddenly, the noisy kitchen didn't feel so bothersome. Maybe it was because their laughter drowned it out, or because warmth in the heart makes every other sound fade. "And you? Besides deadlines, what protects your heart?" Ethan asked. "My neighbor, Mr. Whitmore," Claire replied immediately. "Hobbies include spying on people in the lobby, knocking on my door at 6:05 p.m., sharp to remind me of quiet hours, and judging delivery guys by their shoelaces." "Sounds like the grumpy version of Santa Claus," Ethan chuckled. "Does he hand out gifts?" "Oh, he does. Lectures on apartment living culture." Ethan leaned back, chin in hand, eyes aflash, light with inspiration. "Tell me more." "I need a character model, the gatekeeper of the apartment complex. Yesterday, I was blow-drying my hair at 6:05. He knocked, pointed at his watch, and said, "You've gone over 5 minutes." I said, "It's just a hair dryer, not a dement." "Jackhammer," he replied. "Your sound of happiness shouldn't exceed regulations." Ethan burst out, laughing so hard he had to wipe his eyes. Claire laughed too, surprised at how something so irritating could turn funny when shared with someone who listened attentively. The waiter brought warm toast to make up for the mistake. Ethan broke it in half, handing her a piece as if it were a little ritual. Then he drew the coaster toward him, pencil ready. "Allow me to break the restaurant rules a bit," he said, sketching soft lines. "What are you drawing?" "The green space I mentioned earlier." In seconds, a leafy awning, steps leading to a small square, a low fountain, and simple wooden benches appeared, a pocket garden between buildings, friendly, inviting. He added circles for children running, dashes for people reading. "I want cities to have little breaths of space like this," he said quietly. "Nothing grand, Just trees, water, places to sit, somewhere to pass by and feel a little lighter. Claire's throat tightened, unexpectedly, maybe because she'd spent all day pretending she was fine, and now someone had placed in front of her a sketch of simple kindness toward life. "Where is this?" she asked softly. "Anywhere I can manage." Ethan smiled. "For now I'm trying to get approval for a forgotten lot between two old buildings. If I succeed, I'll turn it into a library garden. Benches, trellises, a small fountain. Imagine sitting there at lunch, sunlight through, leaves. Your urgent emails suddenly don't feel so urgent." "Sounds like a dream," Claire murmured, touching the coaster's edge. "I think I need that place." "Everyone does," Ethan winked. "Even your legendary neighbor. I'll design him his own community supervision chair." "Don't. You'll give him a checkpoint station." Claire laughed. At that moment, a child ran past, wielding a spoon like a sword, nearly bumping their table. Ethan whisked the wine glasses aside, with a playful shah like a spy. The child giggled, and the parents apologized. It was all so light, as if fate had thrown in a few small mishaps just to create a memorable night. They talked about everything. Claire's habit of walking 3 blocks each morning, stopping at a corner cafe for the smell of fresh pastries. Ethan's story of students measuring rooftops only to have their beat plans hijacked by a cat. He acted out the cat so well that Claire doubled over, laughing. "You look different when you laugh," he said softly. "That's because I thought you were a nuisance when you sat down," Claire teased. "Now, maybe just slightly a nuisance." "Slightly a quad. Nuisance is a title of honor," Ethan said solemnly. "I'll print it on my business card." They toasted again. Claire realized she'd finished her risada without noticing. Somehow food tasted better when she wasn't alone. Maybe meals were always like that. Or maybe he just seasoned it with laughter. Time slipped by. The manager had already passed 3 times, politely glancing at his watch. Staff cleared empty tables, and lights dimmed slightly. The atmosphere turned intimate, the kitchen noise softer. "I think they want us to leave," Claire said, smiling, apologetically. "Of course. Quiet hours," Ethan replied in mock seriousness. "We can't disturb the restaurant community." When the check came, Claire reached for her card. Ethan raised a hand. "I'll cover my part in the Devonat wine, but yours. You should treat yourself. It's your birthday. You don't have to. I have rules." He smiled, slightly annoying. Strangers know when to stop. They stood together. Outside, the rain had eased into a mist. Cool, night air brushed her skin. Claire lingered under the awning, reluctant to say goodbye too quickly. Their reflections overlapped in the wet pavement, then split apart. "Thank you for," she began, words escaping her. "For letting me dodge my boss," Ethan finished, eyes bright. "And for laughing." Silence hung for a moment. A car passed. Someone whistled at the corner. A breeze carried the damp scent of night. Ethan checked his watch, then her face, as if weighing something. "Tomorrow's Saturday," he said. "Do you have plans?" "Not really. Usually cleaning, laundry, and arguing in my head with Mr. Whitmore about quiet hours." "Then let me propose something different." Ethan tilted his head, leaning slightly closer, as if afraid to break the moment. "Tomorrow, I'll show you something special." Claire blinked. "What? If I told you now, it wouldn't be special." He smiled, mysteriously. "Just wear comfortable shoes. I'll take care of coffee and croissants." She wanted to ask where, what, how far, but stopped. Something, small but certain, bloomed in her chest. Not recklessness, just enough trust to take one more step. "All right," Claire nodded, "but I'll pay for my own croissant." Deal sealed. Ethan held out, his hand like a contract. Claire laughed, shaking it. His grip was short, warm, and steady. Happy birthday again, Claire. Hayes, he said. See you tomorrow. Morning. See you tomorrow, Ethan. Cole. Ethan stepped back, waved, and disappeared into the damp street. Claire lingered under the awning, watching the streetlights ripple across puddles like chasing sparks. The evening, which began with mishaps, ended in quiet ease. He last opened her palm. The coaster lay cool against her skin. A leafy awning, a small fountain, simple benches drawn in, soft pencil strokes. Claire slipped it into her wallet, smiling. Then she stepped out onto the sidewalk, light-hearted, as if crossing a bridge. On the other side, she knew someone had just promised to show her something special. Strangely, that was enough to make tonight no longer a lonely birthday. The doorbell rang at 10:08. Claire was still hurriedly tying her hair, her other hand fumbling with her coat zipper. She peered through the peephole, a tall, lean man in a grey twill coat, a paper bag of pastries in his left hand, a tray of steaming hot coffee in his right. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he just wrestled with the morning wind. Ethan Cole. Before Claire could open the door, this lobby's trademark husky voice resounded. "Hey, you stop right there." Mr. Whitmore appeared as if he'd popped out of the wall. Brown sweater, moss green tie, notebook tucked under one arm, black ballpoint pen positioned like it was ready to issue a citation. He looked Ethan up and down with the attitude of someone determining the threat level of an unfamiliar visitor. "Who are you here to see? Purpose? Do you have an appointment? Identification?" He rattled off, eyebrows bristling. Ethan startled a little, then immediately straightened up, lifting the coffee tray as if presenting a logbook. "Sir, I have an appointment with Miss Claire Hayes. Purpose to deliver breakfast along with a bit of happiness. I do have ID, but I'm currently too busy keeping the coffee from spilling. Visitors are not allowed to bring outside food in if it soils the lobby carpet," Mr. Whitmore said, eyes fixed on the tiny beads of condensation on the store lids. "And no making noise. I promise I'll leave as quietly as a bellety. Cat, a well-behaved cat." Ethan smiled, leaning toward the coffee as if whispering to it. "You hear that, guys? Silence, please." Claire opened the door just then and nearly burst out laughing. "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore. This is my friend Ethan. He's completely harmless and very good at walking softly and speaking softly. I acknowledge your assurance." The man nodded, still sneaking a glance at Ethan. "Just a reminder, Saturday quiet hours last until 9. No loud laughter, no scraping chairs across the floor." "I'll laugh in my thoughts," Ethan said solemnly, "and I pledge not to scrape anything except a croissant." The corner of Mr. Whitmore's mouth twitched as if he were wrestling with himself between stern and slightly amused. In the end, he flicked his hand. "Fine, but do not spill coffee on the new carpet. That kind hold smells forever." Ethan inclined his head like he was bowing to a castle's master of ceremonies. "Understood, Lord of the Carpet." Claire couldn't hold it in and covered her mouth, laughing. She thanked him and pulled Ethan inside. When the door clicked shut, the two of them looked at each other and broke into a small laugh, as if afraid of violating the rules. "You've just passed the toughest test in this building," Claire said, taking the pastry bag. "I know. I rehearsed all night. Don't spill the coffee. Don't spill the coffee. Don't spill the coffee." Ethan mimicked a whisper, handing her a cup. "Latte for you." "No sugar. Did I guess right?" Claire was surprised. "How did you know?" "Yesterday, you ordered sparkling wine, but winced at the overly sweet dessert. People like that usually take their coffee without sugar," he winked. "And here's a butter croissant, the kind that flakes everywhere, but worth it." They stood right in the hallway, leaning against the wall, savoring the first sip. The smell of coffee mingled with warm butter, melting into the chilly morning air, so delicious that they both sighed with contentment. "So, what's the something special?" Claire tilted her head. "I told you, if I say it now, it won't be special," Ethan smiled. "Just wear comfortable shoes. The rest depends on your courage. I'm only afraid of Mr. Whitmore," Claire joked. "Otherwise, let's go." Ethan's car was an old green station wagon, the kind that looked like it was made for hauling plants more than people. In the back seat, 2 small fern pots trembled. A few thick books were strapped in with a seatbelt, along with a tape measure and a roll of pencils. "Sorry about the mobile mini-forest," Ethan said, lowering the window for air. "I'm acting as temporary babysitter for some office plants. They need sun on the weekends." "Do they have names?" Claire asked, surprised. "They do. The one on the left is Little Tangle because it's always tangled. On the right is Sir Nonchalant because its leaves droop, regardless of life." Claire giggled and buckled her seatbelt. "Do you often talk to plants?" "Yes, and they rarely argue," Ethan replied deadpan. On a Saturday morning, the city was still half asleep. Streetlights hadn't fully switched off. A few cafes had opened early. Joggers slipped by like little dashes. The wind carried last night's dampness and a faint, yeasty scent of baked goods. Ethan turned on a small radio. Soft jazz hummed in the background. "Are we going far?" Claire asked. "Not far, just a little roundabout," Ethan said, turning. "Down a narrow street. I want you to forget you're surrounded by concrete." The car stopped in front of a row of old brick walls blanketed with ivy. A low, iron gate was locked with a rusty padlock, but beside it was a narrow passage just wide enough for one person to slip through. Ethan grabbed the bag of croissants and a thick blanket from the trunk. "Let's go," he said as casually as if inviting her to cross a building field. They squeezed past the wall and stepped onto a path hidden under dense branches. The smell of damp earth rose. Birds chattered somewhere. Leaves rustled beneath their feet. Claire noticed her breathing had slowed, as if her lungs were surprised to be inhaling a different kind of air. "What is this place?" she whispered. "Once I was looking up records for an old house that was demolished long ago," Ethan said, pushing branches aside for her. "The house is gone, but the neglected garden is still here inside these walls. Someone forgot to lock a side gate. I've been coming by sometimes ever since. I don't tell many people." The path opened up and Claire came to a stop. In front of her was a clearing that felt like a fairy tale. New green grass spread like a carpet dotted with low lavender bushes. In the middle stood a round stone, a basin, its still surface reflecting a patch of silver sky. A few old wooden benches sat scattered about, each worn by time. Ancient trees reached out their canopies, thick green leaves filtering the early sun into little round coins of light that fell to the ground like candy. In one corner, 2 young people sketched in notebooks. Near the wall, an I% vested wall. In the next, in 4, into flat, today the Y. Elderly couple quietly shared bread as if afraid to wake the garden. Farther away, a calico cat sprawled on a stone step, belly up to the Sunday. "Oh," Claire exhaled, the sound like a smile. "I didn't think a place like this existed. Here." "No one does," Ethan said softly. "But it's here, like a gentle secret." They spread the blanket under a tree, near the basin. Ethan handed Claire a croissant. The crust crackled and blistered, the butter rich and fragrant. Each break sent a gentle rain of crumbs onto the blanket. The coffee had cooled, just enough to drink into big swallows. "It feels like I just ran away from the city," Claire said, watching the sunspots dance across her palm. "Not running away, just a proper recess." Ethan smiled. Cities need places like this to remember how to soften. Claire fell silent. She could hear tiny sounds she usually ignored. A bee, buzzing, water seeping through moss in the basin, someone's pencil, whispering. Across paper, everything felt cushioned, as if lined with velvet. Yesterday I thought I should ask to transfer back to my old branch, she said, her voice as calm as if speaking to the grass. I felt like I'd never fit in here. And now? Ethan asked. Now I think maybe I haven't gone to the right places yet. Claire smiled faintly. I only know the way from home to the office, office to the supermarket, supermarket back home. Any city would be scary if it's just those 3 points. Ethan nodded, his eyes saying he'd been waiting for that line. That's why I brought you to a light. 4th point. The calico cat sauntered over and sniffed at the paper bag. Ethan put on a stern face. Number butter isn't good for a beauty like you. The cat meowed in protest, then circled and flopped down right against Claire's heel, its tail brushing her ankle and making her giggle. I once sketched a garden corner like this in my notebook, Ethan said, pointing at the basin. A circle where people can gather but aren't forced to. Anyone who wants quiet can find a nook. Anyone who wants to talk might accidentally meet someone's eyes here. That makes sense, Claire said, turning the paper cup in her hands. At my company, people meet eyes to guess who holds power. Here, it seems it's just to say good morning. I wish the city were full of those good mornings, Ethan replied. They sat for a while in their leisure. The only sounds were the leaves whispering and water trickling from the stone basin. Claire realized her heartbeat had slowed, as if all her work, worries and co-workers' whispers were stuck outside those ivy-covered walls. How about this? Ethan said suddenly, turning half a pastry in his hand. If you had to make one wish today, what would it be? Claire lifted an eyebrow. Are you turning breakfast into an blay interview? Number. It's just if this secret is something you and I share, there should be a few wishes to go with it. Claire pressed her lips together, thinking. Her initial smile faded into contemplation. I think I wish I had a place to call home, not a hastily rented apartment, not an office with lights on all night, and definitely not a seat by a noisy kitchen in a restaurant. Just place where I don't feel out of place. Ethan was quiet for a moment, letting the weight of that settle into the grass. Then he nodded slowly. I understand. And you? Claire asked, and looking over. Ethan swept his gaze across the garden, the mossy basin, the old benches, sunlight pooling into round spots. He lifted his hand as if sketching a building in the air. I want to create more spaces like this for the Stein city, places where people can take a deep breath and feel like they can still breathe. Claire smiled. You sound like a poet. No, I'm an architect, Ethan countered, though his eyes gleamed playfully. Very different things. Poets make people dream. I just want to make them feel less stifled. They both laughed. Their laughter rang in the quiet space like a little bell trembling. Claire leaned her head back against the tree and thought that it had been a long time since she'd laughed so freely. Since arriving in the city, she'd been bracing herself, non-stop. Now in this secret garden with a man who was slightly annoying but sincere, the weight eased noticeably. Ethan kept talking, his tone a mix of earnest and teasing. You know, if I ever succeed, I'll build rooftop parks, turn parking lots into gardens, and put wooden benches on every corner. And I will definitely reserve a spot for a statue of your grumpy neighbor. Claire laughed, naughty ass, covering her mouth. If Mr. Whitmore heard that, he'd probably rally the entire residence council to protest. That's fine. I'll build a complaints room next to it. Give people a place to grumble and they'll be less cranky. Their smiles lingered in the deep green space. Their conversation moved between thoughtful and playful, and Claire realized for the first time in many months that she felt truly light. An ordinary Saturday morning, yet it became a morning she knew she would remember. A morning with croissants, coffee, and a secret garden, and a new smile. Claire wasn't sure why she agreed so quickly. All she knew was that after that morning in the secret garden, Ethan's invitation felt a lot easier to accept. Tonight, I'm having a little get-together with some friends. They're all a bunch of oddballs, but fun. You'll come, right? Ethan asked as he drove her home. Claire hesitated. She was used to office parties where people raise glasses of white wine, but their eyes gleamed with calculation. The thought of a completely unfamiliar gathering made her both curious and nervous. I don't know. I'm not sure I'd fit in, she admitted. Trust me, Ethan said with a grin, eyes still on the road. There, all you need to know is how to laugh. That evening, Claire, he stepped into a third-floor apartment in an old neighborhood. Gentle music drifted from inside, not too loud, just enough to set a rhythm for the bursts of laughter. The door opened, and Ethan welcomed her with a grin that stretched from ear to ear. Welcome to the Oddball Club. The room glowed warmly with string lights like tiny stars, and the walls were hung with paintings. A long wooden table in the middle overflowed with food, homemade pizza, salad, cookies, and a pot bubbling away in the kitchen corner. This is Anna, Ethan introduced, pulling Claire toward a short-haired girl with paint still on her hands. She's a painter, specializes in portraits where the eyes are always bigger than real life. Anna stuck out, her paint-stained hand. Nice to meet you. Don't mind the mess. I just finished attacking a wall today. Claire laughed, shaking her hand, leaving a smudge of blue-green on her own finger. And this is Daniel, history teacher. But whenever he tells a story, it starts in the 18th century and ends in Star Wars, Ethan went on, tall and lanky with round glasses. Daniel straightened his tie and immediately launched in. History and Star Wars both teach us about power and tragedy, you see. The entire room groaned in chorus. Daniel, making Claire double over laughing. Next, Maya, chef divided by kitchen destroyer. Ethan pointed at a Grace, brown-skinned woman in a soft-stained apron. I don't destroy, I create. Ma shot back, handing Claire a cookie. Try this. I call it tomato basil chocolate. Claire cautiously bit into it. The flavor, unusual. She swallowed quickly and nodded. Very original. Maya beamed. See, finally someone who gets me. And last, Leo, musician. He'll sing at any time, whether anyone asks or not. Ethan finished. Leo, his long hair tied back, cradled a beat-up guitar. He immediately strummed a chord and sang, Welcome, Claire, the newcomer here. The room erupted in laughter. Claire clutched her stomach, surprised at how easy the atmosphere felt. The party kicked off with a simple game of charades. The loser had to sing any song. Daniel kept it losing because he launched into historical lectures instead of acting out the scenarios. Your word was cat, but you gave us the industrial revolution, Anna scolded. But cats are the silent witnesses of all social upheaval, Daniel declared passionately. In the end, he was forced to sing. Standing stiffly, glasses off, he suddenly belted out. Happy birthday to you. It's not my birthday anymore. Claire laughed until her cheeks hurt. To me, history is a cycle, Daniel replied. Deadpan. Every day can be a birthday. The room exploded with laughter. Then it was Maya's turn. She flapped her arms in an attempt at airplane, but everyone that is prized. Guest, roast chicken. She had to sing, off-key and tuneless, forcing Leo to strum wildly to keep up. A pop song collapsed into chaotic improv, growing funnier with every note. Claire laughed. until tears streamed down her face. She couldn't remember the last time she felt so carefree. No judgmental stares, no whispered comparisons, just laughter and genuine welcome. Later, as the group bustled to clear the table, Ethan tugged Claire onto the balcony. City lights winked in the distance, the air carrying the smell of pizza and fresh paint. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think it feels like I just found a second family," Claire said softly, smiling. "Everyone's so warm." Ethan nodded. "Told you, here. All you need to do is laugh." Claire glanced back into the apartment. Anna snapping photos of the pizza, Maya yelling, "Don't eat all my unique cookies." Daniel fixing his tie to deliver another lecture. Leo strumming and chanting, "Pizza, pizza," like a chorus. A group of genuine oddballs, but endearingly so. Leaning against the railing, Claire felt something ease inside her. For the first time since moving to the city, she felt welcomed, not for her job title, not for her achievements, but for her smile, her presence, just her, and that was more precious than anything. On Monday morning, Claire stepped into the company's headquarters with a mood completely different from every week before. It wasn't that the work had gotten any less demanding. Deadlines still breathing down her neck, emails still piled like mountains, but because she just had such an unusual weekend. A morning in a secret garden, an evening with Ethan's oddball friends, laughter still echoing somewhere inside her. For the first time, Claire didn't feel entirely like an outsider in the city. She greeted the lobby guard with a clear smile, receiving a surprised nod in return. In the elevator, instead of staring at her phone as always, she looked straight into the mirror, adjusted her hair, and smiled softly at herself. The morning meeting began as usual. A long conference room, glossy, white table, 10 colleagues already, seated, all focused on their laptops. Claire's direct manager, sharp composed, Marjorie, looked around and said evenly, "We need ideas for the new product campaign. Any suggestions?" The room fell silent, only the faint tapping of keys. Normally, Claire would have kept quiet because every time she spoke, someone would inevitably raise an eyebrow or sigh, as if to say, what could she possibly know? But today, Ethan's words from the night before rang in her mind. "Don't forget, you're better than they think." Claire took a breath and raised her hand. "I have an idea." Heads turned. Marjorie gave her a small nod to continue. Claire stood up, her heart racing. Instead of flashy, overproduced ads, what if we created a series of content based on the real experiences of our customers? Short, simple videos filmed in familiar corners of the city. Real people, real stories. A few colleagues frowned, skeptical. "But," Claire went on, her voice steadier, "people are tired of perfectly polished images. What they want is relatability. I think this could be a way for our brand to breathe." She stopped, heart pounding. Silence hung for a moment. Then Marjorie nodded, her eyes lighting up. "Good idea, Claire. Let's try a pilot based on that." "Suggestion." Claire sat down, exhaling softly. Her heart was still pounding, but this time from exhilaration. In the days that followed, she was assigned to lead a small team to develop the idea. At first, 2 colleagues showed clear reluctance, but when the first test clip was played, a simple video of a young mother using the product in her small product kitchen, their attitude shifted. "It feels more real," one admitted. "Maybe this could work." Claire smiled, saying nothing. In her mind, she heard Ethan again. "See, I told you you're better than they think." Ethan didn't miss a single day without sending her a playful message. "Don't forget lunch. Rosado doesn't magically grow inside a lunchbox. If co-workers give you a hard time, just remember Mr. Whitmore and be glad at least they're not knocking on your door at 6 5 p.m. Your new campaign will succeed. I've already asked Little. Tangle and Sir Nonchalant, the plants, pray for you. Those messages, sprinkled with odd emojis, became the brightest spots of her days. Claire often caught herself laughing at her phone in the office, startling her co-workers. Her after-work habits began to change, too. Instead of rushing straight home to shut herself in silence, she sometimes detoured down the small street to the cafe Ethan had shown her, or wandered through the local market just to watch vendors smile at customers. Once she stopped in the park to listen to Leo strum his guitar during a street performance, while Maya sold her homemade cookies beside him. Claire realized that the city no longer felt so cold. It smelled of fresh bread, echoing with warm, slightly off-key guitar chords, and it had those patches of green that Ethan once pointed out. And most importantly, it had people who truly opened their i5 hearts. One afternoon, when her team finished the final report, Marjorie asked Claire to stay behind. "I see clear progress in you, Claire," she said, her tone softer than usual. "Your idea has given us a new direction. Keep it up." Claire left with lighter steps. In the elevator, she smiled to herself. Back at her apartment, she texted Ethan the news. Barely 2 minutes later, his reply came. "See, I told you. You're not just better than they think. You're better than you ever thought of yourself." Claire sat down, gazing at the glowing screen. Each word felt like an invisible hand, gently brushing her heart. On a Friday night, Ethan messaged, "Want to take a walk? I'd like to show you another part of the city, a place where you won't feel out of place." Claire agreed. They met at the bustling central square. Ethan led her through winding alleys until they reached an abandoned rooftop on an old building. From there, the entire city unfolded. Golden lights, stretching like streams of stars, cars, streaking like moving beams. The wind was strong, carrying the strange scent of dust mixed with wild flowers growing between the bricks. "I want to turn places like this into rooftop gardens," Ethan said, eyes glinting. "A space where anyone can come just to sit and breathe." Claire looked at him, her chest filled with an indescribable warmth. At that moment, her phone buzzed. A message from a colleague. "Claire, the campaign video is live. The audience feedback is amazing." She laughed, showing Ethan the screen. He pumped his fist in celebration, then, unable to resist, grabbed her by the hand and spun her around on the rooftop, as if they just won a championship. Claire laughed freely, her laughter carried away by the wind. That night, back at home, she sat by the window, staring at the distant lights. One thought surfaced clearly. This city, once a place that made her feel lost, was slowly becoming home, not because of her small apartment, nor only because her work was improving, but because here she had moments like a morning in a secret garden, an evening with oddball friends, or the daily witty messages from a man, slightly annoying, but genuine. Claire smiled to herself, whispering, "Maybe I really have found a corner that belongs to me." That weekend, Claire and Ethan went for pizza at a little place in the Italian district. The restaurant wasn't much, just an old brick oven and the smell of oregano drifting out to the sidewalk. But for Claire, it was the first time she didn't feel like she was eating alone. Ethan ordered the largest pizza on the menu, insisting that eating small is disrespecting the art of pizza making. "Are you sure we can finish this?" Claire asked, staring at a pie the size of their entire table. "Not sure," Ethan grinned. "But pizza isn't meant to be finished. It's meant to test patience and endurance." The line made Claire burst out laughing, nearly dropping her slice onto her dress. They argued over how thick the cheese layer should be until a sudden downpour crashed outside. The tiny restaurant quickly overflowed with customers, chairs and tables crammed together. Ethan glanced out the window, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Run for it." Before Claire could respond, he grabbed her hand and bolted. Rain slapped their faces. Water splashed up from the car tires, but they kept running, laughing until they were breathless. Ethan still held the last slice, now a soggy mess, and shoved it into his mouth mid-sprint, shouting over the rain, the taste of victory. Claire doubled over with laughter, drenched, hair and tangles, dress clinging to her. She hadn't felt this alive, this childlike, in years. When they finally stopped under the awning of a bookstore, soaked through, their eyes met, bright, breathless, and Claire realized her heart was beating differently. Another evening, Ethan decided to cook at home. A modern man has to know at least 3 dishes, he declared. "Tonight, I'm serving chicken and orange sauce with fresh pasta." Skeptical, but curious, Claire showed up. From the doorway, she knew she should brace herself. The kitchen looked like a battlefield. Flour was everywhere. Orange juice was overflowing from a pitcher, and a pot was boiling furiously on the stove. "This is the experimental phase," Ethan explained, holding a pan of chicken that was already smoking at the edges. "It's on fire," Claire shrieked, rushing to shut off the stove. The two of them scrambled to clean up, laughing until their sides hurt. In the end, Ethan's special dinner turned into instant noodles with canned salad. He still looked proud. "See, the art is an improvisation. This is fusion cuisine. Global ramen meets European salad." Claire ate while shaking her head, tears of laughter rolling down her cheeks. A disaster, yes, but one of the most memorable evenings she'd had. Another of time while walking through the farmer's market. Ethan spotted an apple tree, heavy with fruit, its branches hanging over a fence. His eyes lit up like a child's. "Claire, this is a treasure. Don't tell me you're going to—" She began, but he was already climbing. Passers-by stopped to watch, children cheering. Claire flushed red, torn, between worry and amusement. "Get down. What if someone catches you? Then we'll be knared as modern-day Robin Hoods," Ethan called down, reaching for an apple. Just as Claire feared, a market security guard rushed over, shouting, "Hey, you down! That's public property." Claire covered her face in embarrassment. Ethan jumped down quickly, holding the apple out like a surrendered piece of evidence. "I'm sorry, sir. It's just, it looked too beautiful." The guard glared, then turned to Claire and shook his head. "Your boyfriend's going to be trouble." The words stunned Claire. She didn't correct him. Her cheeks burned too hot. Ethan caught her eye, a strange gleam of delight flashing there, but he only smiled faintly. They walked away with a douceur bag of apples, purchased properly this time. Ethan bit into one, smirking. "Fine, next time I'll invite the guard to climb with me." Claire laughed, though her heart still buzzed with the echo of those 2 words, your boyfriend. Those quirky little outings kept piling up, none of them perfect in the cinematic sense, but all the more precious because of their spontaneity, their clumsiness, even their small failures. Each time she was with Ethan, Claire felt allowed to let go, to laugh loudly, to be awkward without fear of judgment. They teased each other like friends. "You really are a kitchen disaster, and you're the victim of that disaster." But in the quiet pauses between jokes, when their eyes met unexpectedly, Claire sensed something different. Not just friendship, not just fun. One night, after walking her to her door, Ethan lingered. He looked at her for a long moment. No words, just a slightly uneven smile, a gaze that held on longer than usual. Claire's heart raced. She quickly turned away, pretending to search for her keys. Inside her, something was quietly taking shape. She didn't need Ethan to put it into words. nor a grand declaration under fairy lights. That look was enough. It told her they were moving closer little by little, and most of all, she wasn't afraid. That week, Claire's company was busier than ever. The marketing campaign she had proposed was entering its final stretch. The office buzzed with the clatter of keyboards, non-stop ringing phones, and back-to-back meetings that left no time and for a proper lunch. The break room was cramped, filled with the bitter smell of coffee and the distant rhythm of typing. Claire walked in to pour some water and immediately caught snippets of two colleagues gossiping. "You know that guy Claire's always hanging out with," one said, lowering her voice but clearly making sure it carried. "Yeah, it looks polished on the outside, but I heard he's just some small-time architect projects nobody remembers." "Exactly. Always talking about those so-called green buildings. Sounds nice, but in reality, he can't make anything happen. More of a smooth talker than anything." Dry laughter followed. Claire froze. The words pricked like needles, straight into the fragile trust she'd been holding. Quietly, she turned away. But inside, her chest was churning. That evening, Ethan invited her out for dinner. Claire claimed she was busy. He only replied with a single line, "No problem. Another time then." Still in his usual playful tone. But to Claire, it suddenly sounded hollow. Her mind replayed the words from earlier. All talk. She remembered the times Ethan had scribbled sketches of pocket parks on coasters, the dreams he spoke with, eyes lit bright. Back then, Claire had felt his sincerity, almost childlike faith in good things, but now she couldn't help wondering, was it all just talk to impress her? That weekend, Ethan called, his voice brimming with excitement. "Claire, I want to show you my latest design. My team's been working on it for months, and I think you'll love it." Claire gripped the phone tightly. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, to keep believing in him, but another part hesitated, weighed down by those whispers. I'm not sure. I might be busy," she said softly. On the other end, there was a brief silence. Then Ethan replied low, still trying to sound upbeat. "Yeah, no worries. Just let me know when you're free. I'll save you a spot." The call ended. Claire set the phone down, put on the table, and sat there staring blankly. A cold thought crossed her mind. Maybe he really is just someone who talks big. In the days that followed, Claire no longer texted him as much. Her replies grew short. Sometimes she ignored his messages altogether. Ethan still sent his silly jokes. Still, he wished her a workday free from toxic deadlines. Still told stories about Mr. Whitmore as if they were laughing side by side, but Claire read them without smiling. She closed her phone, torn inside. In front of colleagues, she wanted to keep her distance, didn't want to be looked down on for being close to a big talker. But deep down, she felt a loss, as though she were pushing away something precious with her own hands. That night, she lay on her bed, ceiling, blurred in the dark. The trust she'd given Ethan, the man who had pulled her, running through the rain, who had made her laugh in the secret garden, was cracking, and she didn't know if that crack could ever be mended. Ethan was never a hard man to read. Claire had known that since the very first day she met him. Whatever he thought usually showed right on his face. So, when she started replying to his texts with curt words, when their meetups were postponed, under the excuse of being too busy, it was certain he'd noticed, and he didn't avoid it. One evening, Ethan called. The voice was calm, but firmer than usual. "Claire, I want to see you. Not for dinner, not for jokes, just to clear a few things up." Claire hesitated, but something in his tone made it impossible to refuse. They met at a quiet cafe near the downtown area. Ethan arrived early, sitting at a window table with a large paper bag in front of him, stuffed with rolls of drawings. When Claire walked in, he stood to greet her, not with his usual playful grin, but with steady, serious eyes. "I'm not good at circling. A round thing," he began. "Claire, I know. You've been avoiding me lately, and I think I know why." Claire gripped a glass of water, saying nothing. Ethan drew a breath, then continued. "You've heard people call me a big talker, haven't you? Someone who makes promises, but never delivers." Claire flinched. His bluntness stripped bare the doubt she'd been hiding. She opened her mouth to protest, but the resolve in his eyes held her back. "They're not entirely wrong," Ethan said slowly. "I've been rejected plenty of times. There were projects where I submitted my designs, and people scoffed. Pretty but unrealistic. I've poured a whole year into a proposal, only to have it tossed aside." He paused, tightening his hand around the roll of explain paper. "I know that to a lot of people I probably look like nothing more than a useless dreamer. But there's one thing I've never done: pretend. Everything. I've told you, every dream I've shared, they've all been real." Claire's throat tightened. Her doubts began to feel less like caution, more like shame. Ethan opened the bag and pulled out a large roll of drawings, carefully spreading them across the table. Pencil strokes, watercolor, shading, and detailed notes filled the tense of his page. "This is the project I've poured my heart into," he said, voice steady. "A green complex right in the center of Amen, the city. At the heart, an open park, surrounded by a library, a plaza, and shared community spaces." His finger traced the page here, a man-made pond, where people can read under the trees. Over here, a small square wide enough for kids to play and adults to listen to. Street music, and the rooftop of the library, a community garden where anyone can plant, anyone can harvest. Claire followed his hand, her eyes widening. These weren't the casual sketches on napkins she'd seen before. This was a detailed, large-scale plan, each section carefully drawn, every line radiated passion and seriousness. "I don't know if this project will be approved," Ethan admitted, looking directly at her, "but I can promise you it's not empty talk. I don't make hollow vows. I truly believe this city can breathe easier, and I'll see it through." Claire sat motionless, the whispers that had gnawed at her mind suddenly dissolved, replaced by the sight of the man before her. A steady gaze, graphite, still smudged on his hand, in a voice low but sincere. Emotion welled in her chest, hard to name. Every croissant morning, every rain-soaked run, every laugh under an awning. None of it had been a game. It had all come from his truth. "Ethan," Claire whispered, eyes brimming. "I'm sorry. I doubted you." Ethan shook his head, a gentle smile finally softening his face. "Don't apologize. I get it. Trust doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, and I'm ready for that." Claire looked back at the drawing. In the middle of the city's cold towers, that green complex stood like a promise, a dream you could almost touch. In that moment, she knew this man wasn't a smooth talker. He was someone who dared to dream big, dared to pursue it, and, most importantly, dared to be genuine. The news came on an early autumn morning, just as Claire set her coffee cup on her desk. Her phone buzzed, non-stop. On the screen flashed Ethan's name, followed by a string of frantic messages. "Oh my God, you won't believe this. Get out of the office right now. I have to tell you in person." Claire frowned, puzzled, but the sheer excitement in every word made her heart beat faster. An hour later, they met at their usual cafe near the park. Ethan burst in, clutching a thick folder, hair mussed, eyes sparkling like a kid with a new toy. "Claire," he nearly shouted. Harrison said, "Yes, who's Harrison?" Claire blinked. The head of the biggest real estate group in the region, he's decided, to fund my green complex project. Not just promises, an official signed deal. Claire froze for a second, then laughed in sheer surprise. Ethan pulled out a chair opposite her and spread the documents on the table. His hands trembled, but his voice was steady. They'll finance the entire first phase. Construction starts this year. If all goes well, it'll become a new landmark for the city. Claire stared at the familiar drawings, except this time, the lines weren't just dreams. They were about to turn real. Emotions swelled in her chest until she had to swallow hard. "Ethan, congratulations," she whispered, her eyes glistening. "No." Ethan shook, his head, his smile blazing. "Thank you. If it weren't for you, I'd never have dared chase this far." Claire laughed, trying to hide the tremor in her chest. "I didn't do anything. You believed in me," Ethan replied simply. "That's more than enough." The news spread fast. Local papers ran headlines. A new symbol for the city. First large-scale green complex to break ground. The main image was the sketch of Ethan's project, a central park ringed by a library, a plaza, and rows of glass houses. The public buzzed with anticipation. Industry colleagues whispered in surprise. Ethan's name had never been mentioned this much before. On the groundbreaking day, Claire and Ethan's oddball friends arrived early. Anna carried her sketchbook, and Daniel came armed with historical anecdotes. The Romans built plazas like this too, except they didn't have Wi-Fi. Maya brought a box of cookies to fuel the find. Architect, and Leo slung his guitar, ready to play. Claire stood in the crowd, eyes fixed on Ethan as he stepped onto the stage. He wore a simple white shirt, hair stirring in the breeze. His voice was deep. No trace of bragging, just genuine conviction. This isn't just a project. It's a promise that this city deserves places to breathe. Deserves spaces where people can sit, read, laugh, and feel like they belong. Thunderous applause followed. Pride surged through Claire, swelling until it nearly broke her. But joy came with challenges. From that day forward, Ethan practically vanished into work. He spent nights with engineers, architects, and cost contractors, endless meetings, drawings, revised until midnight. His schedule stretched like a taut string. Claire worried. Sometimes near midnight, her lost phone buzzed with his messages. "Are you asleep? If not, pray that the library roof doesn't collapse on my 5th revision." Or, "I've had enough coffee for 3 people today. If I sprout a second head, would you still be my friend?" Those silly lines made Claire laugh, but they also stung. She knew he was exhausted, yet still tried to reassure her, afraid she'd worry too much. One night, she typed back, "If you grow another head, I'll buy us matching hats." "Fair." His reply was instant. "Perfect. One head will handle the project. The other will focus on making you laugh." Claire bit her lip, torn between sweetness and ache. During those long weeks, the oddball friends became his unofficial support team. Maya delivered late-night meals to the site. Anna sketched each stage of construction, like a visual diary. Daniel entertained the crew with his stories while Leo sat on the steps, strumming a guitar to ease the tension. Claire often stopped by, too, carrying coffee and reminders. "You need to sleep, Ethan. No architect can. Stay upright without rest." He smiled, with dark circles under his eyes, but his gaze was still bright. "I'm still standing because of you." Claire fell, silent, her heart twisting and soaring. At once, winter came, and the project began to take shape. Steel frames rose, high and empty ground morphed into a plaza. The press covered it constantly. Passers-by paused to watch, buzzing with excitement. For Claire, every glimpse of the construction site brought the same thought. This wasn't just Ethan's dream anymore. It had become hers too. Pride swelled in her, not just because of the vision itself, but because she'd been there since the days when it was only a doodle on a cafe coaster. At night, she lay in bed scrolling back through Ethan's silly messages, each line made her smile then blink back tears. He was pouring everything he had into this dream, and she knew every word came from the truest part of him. Claire closed her eyes and whispered into the quiet, "You're not just a dreamer, Ethan. You're the man who dares to make dreams real." And this time, her faith felt as steady as the very foundations rising from the ground outside. The city glowed with light that evening. The newly completed complex featuring green spaces, a library, and open park, and a plaza had officially opened. In the middle of the bustling streets, the project stood both modern and welcoming, tree canopies casting shade, warm golden, windows glowing, and the soft trickle of water from the central fountain. People called it by many names, but the most popular was the green heart of the city. Claire stood in the crowd, eyes shimmering. A year ago, on her 32nd birthday, she had sat lost in a noisy restaurant, feeling she belonged nowhere. But now, on her 33rd, she was standing in the center of a landmark, created by the very man she had chosen to believe in. On stage, Ethan stepped up in a simple suit. Spotlights washed over him, thunderous applause filling the air. The host announced that he had been named Architect of the Year for creating not just a beautiful building, but one that sparked true community spirit. Ethan accepted the trophy, but his eyes immediately searched for Claire in the crowd. His smile made her heart tremble. "Thank you, everyone," Ethan's voice rang out. "But before we finish, I want to tell a story." He set the trophy down on a nearby table, then suddenly pulled out a chair and sat down, mimicking exactly what he had done 1 year ago. The crowd stirred, curious. Ethan looked up, his familiar, mischievous smile returning. "A year ago, I walked into a restaurant, sat down at the table of a complete stranger, and said, 'Please pretend you know me, or else I'll have to sit with my boss and his entire family.'" Laughter rippled through the audience. Claire covered her mouth, tears springing instantly to her eyes. That memory, replayed here in this place, squeezed her heart so tightly it hurt. Ethan stood, stepped off the stage, and walked straight toward her. Applause turned into cheers. When he reached her, he slowly dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. His voice shook lightly but carried steady strength. "Claire Hayes, a year ago, you saved me from the worst dinner of my life. Today, let me save every one of today at your days with the rest of my life." Claire broke down, tears spilling as her hands trembled over her face. Around them, applause and whistles erupted. Ethan opened the box, the silver ring glittering beneath the lights. "Will you marry me?" Ethan asked, his eyes bright and full of hope. Claire nodded again and again, unable to speak. Tears streamed down her face as a radiant smile broke through. The entire plaza roared with applause, the tears echoing across the great open air of the very complex he had built. Ethan rose, pulling Claire into a glass of court, fierce embrace. She buried her face against his shoulder, her voice choked, but joyous. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Amid cheers, brilliant lights, and intensely brilliant ringvias, the very heart of the city's green heart, they shared their first kiss of a sidereal, brand new beginning. This birthday, Claire was no longer alone. That spring, the city bloomed under fresh sunlight. The Park Library Green Plaza Ethan had designed had become a place people visited daily. Children running across the grass, students gathered with books. Beneath the trees, elderly couples strolling slowly around the clear pond. And today it was livelier than ever, because the space had been transformed into the setting for a very special and wedding. Behind a makeshift wooden partition, Claire stood in a simple white dress. The lace wasn't extravagant, but it fit perfectly, making her look as Bingley, though she belonged to this place. Natural, radiant, and full of life. Maya adjusted the flower crown in her hair, grinning as she teased. The bride's trembling like that. Then the groom's already won. Claire laughed through shimmering eyes. She looked out. Rows of chairs filled the plaza. Colleagues, the oddball friends, city, residents, even strangers who had come to love this project. In the second row, Mr. Whitmore sat bolt upright in his old suit, stern-faced, notebook clutch, tight. When his eyes met Claire's, he gave a small nod, then quickly turned away, dabbing at his eye as if dust had flown in. The gentle strum of Leo's guitar floated into the air. Anna stood, sketching the scene in quick strokes. Daniel eagerly whispered historical trivia to his neighbors. In ancient Greece, weddings were also held in public squares, but without cookies. While Maya proudly passed around a tray of fresh, warm ones, Claire took a deep breath. In that moment, she knew she was nice, no longer alone. When Ethan appeared in full attention, a light grey suit, his gaze went straight to Claire. The crowd clapped and cheered, but in their small world, there were only two. He held out his hand. Claire placed hers into his, feeling the warmth flow through as he guided her, steadily to the plaza's center, adorned with climbing flower garlands and green ribbons, symbols of new beginnings. There was no lavish ceremony, only a close friend officiating. His voice, clear through the microphone. Today, here at the place born from Ethan's dream, we witnessed Claire and Ethan build another dream, their own home. Ethan turned to Claire, his eyes shining, as brightly as the day he'd first sat down at her table in that noisy restaurant. His voice caught, though he still managed a trace of humor. A year ago, you pretended to know me just to save me from a terrible dinner. Today I don't want you to pretend anymore. Let me save all your days, not by dodging a boss, but with my whole life. Laughter rippled through the crowd, followed by applause and long whistles. Tears welled in Claire's eyes. She nodded, whispering, "Yes, and this time I don't have to pretend." Ethan lifted her hand, pressing a kiss to the gleaming ring. Applause thundered across the plaza. When the vows ended, Claire and Ethan walked hand in hand along the petal-strewn path leading into the lush garden. Leo's guitar played. Daniel's voice was drowned out by laughter, and Maya ran after them, slipping extra cookies into the bride and groom's hands. Behind them, Mr. Whitmore muttered, "An outdoor wedding?" This noisy ruins quiet hours, but everyone could see his ringed eyes in the tight press of his lips to hide a smile. Claire leaned against Ethan's shoulder, gratitude flooding her. A year ago, on this very birthday, she had thought herself a stranger, alone before a guest, mistaken meal. But today, on her birthday again, she had found her true home. Not just an apartment or a city, but a place defined by the man holding in her hand, walking with her through the green garden before the witness of friends in an entire community. As they passed the central fountain, the afternoon sun spilled down, scattering shimmers of light around them. Claire smiled, whispering, "This isn't just your project anymore, Ethan. It's the symbol of our love." Ethan squeezed her and hand tighter, his eyes alight with joy. "And it's the future we'll build, together." Amid the garden's greenery, with applause still echoing, Claire and Ethan stepped forward. They walked into a new life, a new home, where love was no longer a dream, but had become